Kings chapter 1. And if you have your paper that I handed out about the listing the different kings, you may grab that just for a quick reference, as well. I'll refer to that. But we got some cards and text messages and calls and visits, and I appreciate all that and people showing that they care. Got a gift card we're going to use eventually. I told Tammy the other day, I said, I'm going to get some back porch. Well, I fell asleep and woke up about 7:30, so it was too late for that. So we'll get that eventually. But I did cook yesterday for the first time, so there was that. I cooked yesterday. Yeah. So anyway, really don't need the walker other than to get up off the couch and the chair. I do need a cane kind of to help move me along, but the walker, really don't need it anymore. I need my grabber occasionally, but it's attached to the walker, and I don't normally have my walker with me. So anyway, we're getting there, slow but sure. But anyway, I do appreciate everybody's prayers for me. So where we left off at the end of 1 Kings, Ahab has died, and his son Azariah has taken over the reign of Israel. Keep in mind, once again, that Israel and Judah are two separate kingdoms. Israel being the wicked kingdom. Judah, in comparison, was a good kingdom, although they did have several wicked rulers. But Judah was the one promised the Messiah, and so Judah remained faithful to God much better than what the kingdom of Israel did. But Ahab, king of Israel, has died now, and his son Azariah has taken his place. And if you see here on the chart, there on the right side, the kings of Israel. Ahab reigned for 22 years, and his son Azariah, who we're going to talk about today, he reigns for 2 years. And so we're going to read about Azariah here. At this time, too, Elijah is still the prophet in Israel. And so while he was a prophet and essentially a thorn in the side of Ahab's side, he's also going to be a prophet of God towards Azariah. And I told Tammy this week more than once, this chapter 1 just is funny to me how all this plays out. But as we go through here, I think if we put ourselves in the roles of some of these guys, you'll understand why perhaps we think this might be comical how this all plays out. But I will say before we start, in verse 1, Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab. So Moab was a country on the eastern side of the Dead Sea and the eastern side of the Jordan River that had been conquered by David and his armies when David was king around the year 1000. And so for the last 150-ish years, the land of Moab had been ruled by Israel and Judah. And apparently, when the kingdom split, the kingdom of Israel was the one that ruled the area of Moab. Now, Moab, the people of Moab, were descendants of the sons that Lot had. If you remember, when Lot was driven out of Sodom and Gomorrah, his daughters had relations with their father, and they had 2 sons, Moab and Ammon. And those two, Moab and Ammon, were peoples that settled on the eastern side of the Dead Sea and were enemies of Israel and Judah. But again, under King David, Moab and Ammon actually were both conquered by David when he was king of Israel or Judah at the time. So we now have gone roughly 150 years. Ahab is dead, and verse 1 of chapter 1, Moab rebels against Israel. So they find this opportunity because of the death of the king. Now is the time for us to rebel, to begin to take back our independence. Now, I do say that even though that's mentioned here in Scripture, it really has nothing to do with the rest of chapter 1. But this is just the situation that they're under. And as we will see, well, I'm going to jump. I don't want to jump in too far. So with that, let's just start chapter 1, verse 1 of 2 Kings.
The second book of Kings, chapter 1. Then Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab. And Ahaziah fell down through a lattice in his upper chamber that was in Samaria, and was sick. And he sent messengers, and said unto them, Go, inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover of this disease. But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say unto them, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that ye go to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron? Now therefore thus saith the Lord, Thou shalt not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. And Elijah departed.
All right. So, again, Moab is now rebelling against Israel. Israel's king has fallen from perhaps a second-story floor of his, what do kings live? Palace, easy for me to say. And now he's laid up and he's lame. He can't rule because he's fallen from this upper chamber, perhaps the second floor of his palace here. So once again, you see Moab rebelling. Now they don't have a king. They don't have a leader. So Moab will eventually just win their independence because they don't have a leader. But I was saying Azariah. There is no R in it, but you get the point. I'm talking about the same guy here. If I say Azariah, you know who I'm talking about. Azariah. Azariah is much easier to say. Anyway. But it says there that he sent messengers to go and inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. Now, Beelzebub was a false god that the Philistines worshipped. And the center of worship for Beelzebub here was the city of Ekron, which was one of the 5 cities of the Philistines. And Beelzebub was one of the 3 main gods that the Philistines worshipped. But here is the king of Israel, who supposedly should know the God of creation. He wants and sends messengers to this false god to see if he's going to live or die. So he sends these messengers, and verse 3, the angel of the Lord tells Elijah to go and meet these messengers and tell him and ask them, Is there not a God in Israel that you could ask? Why are you asking a false god, a man-made object, if you're going to live or die? Is there no God in Israel? Now, obviously, we could make an argument, yes, there was a God in Israel. He was being completely ignored, not only by the kings, but by most of the people. But the worship of these false gods took precedence over the worship of the God of creation. And so Elijah says, are you going to go ask this false god because you don't have a real God? That's Elijah's take on it. Why are you going to Ekron? Why are you going to the enemy? Why are you going to this false god? And the Lord gives the message to Elijah to give to the messengers that King Azariah, well, there's the R again, is going to die. Now, we don't know how long it takes from the time he falls from the second floor to his death, but it says he reigned 2 years. So perhaps he was laid up in his bed the entirety of his rule. We don't know, because we don't really know when he actually fell. But the word of the Lord comes to these messengers that says, hey, you're going to die. Now, I thought of John and Ron when I was thinking about this. You've been given because you served in the military. You've been given an order to go to a certain place and get information. And instead of following that order and going to that place, you meet a guy on your way there that gives you a message, so you just turn around and go back. That ain't the way armies work. But that's what these guys did. Elijah stopped them in their tracks, and then so they turned around and went back to the king, and essentially, I'm jumping ahead here, and telling the king that he's going to die. They never did go to Beelzebub. They never did go to Ekron. They got this message from this random guy, Elijah, that he's going to die. So they turn around and go back and tell the king that. Well, it was just that. I think in some ways that shows the power of Elijah. It shows the cowardice of the soldiers, perhaps. But this is how God is working. The messengers don't even go to Ekron. Why go there? It's just a false god. Can't do anything in the first place. So they go back, and Elijah departs, and then they go back, which we read here in verse 5.
And when the messengers turned back unto him, he said unto them, Why are ye now turned back?
They got back so quick. He said, Why are you back so fast? Is what he's saying there in verse 5.
And they said unto him, There came a man up to meet us, and said unto us, Go, turn again unto the king that sent you, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that thou sendest to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore thou shalt not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die.
So the messengers give to King Uzziah the message that Elijah had given to them, that you're going to die. And he gave them the same message. Is there not a God in Israel that you could have spoken with? Perhaps in some ways you can say, was there not a prophet in Israel that you could have called upon? Elijah, in this case. No, you are wanting to ask a false god in enemy territory, Ekron, the Philistine city. You want to go there and find out whether you're going to live or die instead of serving the God of Israel that you know and have heard of and have studied and know what he has done for you in the past. But these messengers, they tell him the same thing that Elijah said, that you're going to die. Now, again, I really wish we knew how long of a time frame this was from the time he fell to the time he died, but we don't know that. But that's the message that they have now given to the king. So now the king says in verse number 7,
And he said unto them, What manner of man was he which came up to meet you and told you these words? And they answered him, He was an hairy man, and girt with a girdle of leather about his loins. And he said, It is Elijah the Tishbite.
What's that noise?
He's getting ready to get it.
Oh. So the king asked these guys, well, who was this guy that came and just stopped you in your tracks? Well, we really don't know, but he was a hairy man, and he had a girdle of leather around his loins, and I could just picture the king saying, Elijah. I mean, Elijah was well known, and if anybody's familiar with Seinfeld, where he always goes, Newman, that's how I had it pictured. But the king says, Elijah, of all people, he's the one. It's Elijah. Let's see. This is kind of where it gets kind of funny, in my opinion. Verse 9.
Then the king sent unto him a captain of 50 with his 50. And he went up to him, and behold, he sat on the top of an hill. And he spake unto him, Thou man of God, the king hath said, Come down. And Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, If I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven, and consume thee and thy 50. And there came down fire from heaven, and consumed him and his 50.
So the king gives a command, go and tell Elijah to get over here, I need to see him. So the captain of a 50 and his 50 men go, and they command Elijah to come down from wherever it was where he was, whether it was on a hill, whether it was wherever, but come down to Samaria, essentially, is what they're saying there, because the king wants to see you. Notice there, in verse 9, they call him a man of God. Now, perhaps in some ways, they are calling him that to mock him, not so much out of respect of him being a man of God, but you call yourself a man of God? Okay, well, come down. And Elijah said, hey, if I am a man of God, let fire come down and consume all of you. Well, guess what happens? They all die. Now, this is kind of what happens in Numbers chapter 16 when fire comes down and consumes those that rebel against God. I'm not going to get into all that, but that the same, and you remember the contest on Mount Carmel in 1 Kings chapter 18 or 19, how God sent fire from heaven and consumed the altars and the sacrifices and the water and the dirt and the stones and all that. But Elijah said, if I truly am a man of God, then let God send fire down from heaven and consume you all. So now they're all 51 of them are dead. They're burnt up because he is a man of God. All right, there's group one. We're going to have 3 groups show up here, okay? So group one's gone. Yeah, verse number 11.
Again also he sent unto him another captain of 50 with his 50. And he answered and said unto him, O man of God, thus hath the king said, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said unto them, If I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven, and consume thee and thy 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50.
So there's group 2. Notice, though, the defiance of this leader. Come down quickly. You know, he did come in some type of defiance to not only command him to come down, but to get down here now. And Elijah answers the same way. If I'm a man of God, let fire come down and consume you. So there's the second group. Now, how do you think this third group's going to feel? Because we're going to have a third group go. Now, things are going to be a little different, but we'll see the humility in the third group here after what's happened to these 102 other people that have been sent. Verse 13.
And he sent again a captain of the third 50 with his 50. And the third captain of the 50 went up and came and fell on his knees before Elijah and besought him and said unto him, O man of God, I pray thee, let my life and the life of these 50 thy servants be precious in thy sight.
Notice the humility here. He goes and falls on his knees and asks, "Oh, man of God, I pray, let my life and the life of my 50 be precious. Just do as I ask." Can you do that? Verse 14.
Behold, there came fire down from heaven and burnt up the 2 captains of the former 50s with their 50s. Therefore let my life now be precious in thy sight.
So God rewards the humility of this general or this leader, sergeant, however, because they're not this group of 51 men are not consumed. Verse 15.
And the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah, Go down with him, be not afraid of him. And he arose, and went down with him unto the king. And he said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Forasmuch as thou hast sent messengers to inquire of Baal-zebub the god of Ekron, is it not because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word? Therefore thou shalt not come down off that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die.
So we see here that Elijah goes with the 51 men, the leader and his 50, and he confronts the king, goes to the king and says the same message that was sent perhaps weeks prior. Again, we don't know the time frame. And did you go and inquire? I'm stressing this because did you go and inquire of Beelzebub, of Ekron, because there's no God in Israel? This is a time for Azariah to repent and to turn to God, but he never does. So we might think that God is not being gracious to Azahiah here. There's no R in Warsh, and there's no R in Azahiah. Right?
There you go.
Yeah. But is there no God in Israel? And we could think of the same thing here. We seek all kinds of self-help books and ways to fix our problems or ways to fix our emotions or ways to improve our whatever. Is there not a God in Israel, or is there not a God in New Hebron that we could seek and ask help instead of buying self-help books and seeking outside counsel of people who don't even know God? It's really no different. It's really no different. You serve a God who wants to help and who can help. But many times people, generally speaking, seek help from outside sources instead of the one God who created you and knows you inside and out, and the one that you are to be serving. And again, Elijah asked him, is there no God in Israel? There was, but they forsook him. They turned from him. They weren't serving him. Generally speaking, the people of Israel were not serving God. Again, now there were a remnant. There were people, Elijah being one. And Elijah there were other prophets of God in activity in Israel during this time. But generally speaking, the people of Israel were not serving their God. And so Elijah gives Ahaziah the same message that he gave him perhaps weeks prior. You're not going to come off this bed. Now perhaps had Ahaziah repented and turned and sought the Lord, perhaps his life would have been spared. But that's not what happens. So then we get to verse 17.
So he died according to the word of the Lord which Elijah had spoken. And Jehoram reigned in his stead in the 2nd year of Jehoram the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, because he had no son. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaziah, which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel?
So I want you to understand that when you look at your chart here, there is a king Jeroboam from Israel. At the same time, there's a king Jeroboam in Judah. So the kings of Israel and Judah at this particular time, after the death of Ahaziah, are have the same name. So just understand that as we go through the rest of this. But we're going to talk about Jeroboam in chapter 2. But at this particular point, after Ahaziah has died, the kings of Israel have the same name. Okay? And Jeroboam here in Israel is the brother of Ahaziah because Ahaziah had no sons. And so this Jeroboam is a son of Ahab. All right? So look at